After a horrific accident left me unconscious in the hospital, the doctors immediately contacted my parents. Instead of rushing to my side, they coldly responded, "She's not our problem anymore," leaving the medical staff stunned. When I finally woke up and learned what they had said, the pain of their rejection hurt even more than my injuries. My name is Rebecca Mitchell, and last year, I died. Not metaphorically, not in some poetic sense, but literally. The doctors told my parents I wouldn't survive the night, and their answer? A gut punch that still echoes. She's not our real daughter. We owe her nothing. They just left me there. To die. Alone. A week later they came, vultures circling, ready to pick clean the inheritance my grandmother left me. But my bed was empty. Just a single letter. And when they read it, their perfectly curated lives shattered. If you've ever felt that kind of soul-deep abandonment, then trust me, you'll want to hear how I clawed my way back and rewrote my own ending. I grew up in this picture-perfect white colonial, blue shutters, manicured lawn, the whole 9 yards, just outside Boston. From the outside, we were the quintessential American family, mom, dad, 2 daughters. Our photo albums were packed with birthday parties, piles of presents on Christmas mornings, Disney World vacations. But oh, how photos can lie. I always felt different. I can pinpoint the exact moment I knew something was off. I was 5. My sister, Allison, had knocked over a vase, running wild through the living room. Before Mom even rushed in, I was already on my hands and knees, picking up the pieces. "What happened here?" she demanded. "I did it," I blurted out, automatically, without even thinking. Later, I overheard my mother on the phone, her voice hushed. "Rebecca's always been so eager to please. Not like Allison. Allison has spirit." Spirit. That was their word. For Allison's tantrums in stores, her refusal to eat vegetables, her talking back. But when I did my homework without being asked? It was because I was dutiful. When Allison finally did hers? She was brilliant. The differences were subtle, insidious. Allison always got the bigger bedroom. Allison always got to choose the restaurant on family night. Allison's artwork plastered the refrigerator, while mine? Neatly filed away in a drawer. "Your sister needs more encouragement," my father would explain, dismissively, when I asked why my straight A's didn't earn the same celebration as Allison's B-. "You're just naturally good at school." I was 12 when the dam finally broke, when I learned the truth that shattered everything. It was past midnight, and I'd gotten up for a glass of water. My parents were arguing in the kitchen, their voices sharp, carrying right up the stairs. "You've always favored Allison," my mother hissed. "It's like you're trying to make up for Rebecca not being yours." And then my father, his voice raw with anger. "She's not yours either, Margaret. We agreed when we took her that we'd never treat her differently." The glass slipped from my hand. It hit the hardwood with a deafening shatter. The arguing stopped. My heart was pounding, a wild drumbeat against my ribs. I scrambled back to my room, threw myself into bed, and pretended to be asleep when my mother checked on me. Adopted. That single word explained everything and nothing all at once. Why my hair was dark when everyone else's was blonde. Why I had green eyes when they all had blue. Why, no matter how hard I tried, I never, ever quite belonged. The next morning, at breakfast, I just waited. Waited for them to tell me. To explain. To reassure me that I was loved, just the same. They said nothing. So I did. "I heard you last night," I said, my voice small, but steady. "I know I'm adopted." My father's newspaper lowered, just slightly. My mother paused, pouring coffee. Then she flashed that tight, brittle smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous, Rebecca. You must have been dreaming." And that was it. No confirmation. No denial that felt like truth. Just gaslighting. And breakfast as usual. I learned that day, in our house, truth was less important than appearance. After that, I threw myself into being perfect. If I couldn't be loved for who I was, maybe I could be valued for what I achieved. I graduated top of my class in high school, snagged a full scholarship to MIT, started my own tech company at 22. My parents, of course, attended my graduation. They smiled for the photos, accepted congratulations for having raised such an accomplished daughter. But there was always this sterile, agonizing distance in their eyes. Like they were looking at a project. Not a person. Only my grandmother Martha saw me. Really saw me. She lived in this beautiful old Victorian house in Cambridge, crammed with books and antiques and the comforting smell of cinnamon. Every summer, from age 13 onward, after that earth-shattering adoption revelation, I spent with her. "You have your mother's eyes," she told me once, when I was 15. It was the only acknowledgement, from any family member, that I had biological parents somewhere. "Who was she?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Grandmother Martha patted my hand. "Someone who loved you very much, but couldn't keep you. Someday, when you're older, I'll tell you everything." But someday just kept getting postponed. Throughout college, whenever I asked, she'd say, "After you graduate." After graduation it was, "When you're settled in your career." Later it became, "When the time is right." My yearning for the truth became the silent, aching wound I carried. Meanwhile, my relationship with my parents just corroded. Their law firm, my father's firm, actually represented my main competitor in a patent dispute. A patent dispute. When I confronted him about the obvious conflict of interest, he just shrugged. "Family is one thing. Business is another." Allison, my sister, became a surgeon, following in our father's footsteps, even though he'd switched to corporate law before we were born. Their shared medical background became yet another thing that explicitly excluded me from family conversations. It felt like a constant, quiet amputation of my place in their lives. The final, shattering argument happened 3 years ago, at Thanksgiving dinner. Grandmother Martha was there, friendlier than I remembered, but still sharp as ever. Conversation, predictably, turned to my company's recent success. "We just secured major funding for an AI-powered medical diagnostic tool," I shared, trying to sound casual, trying to ignore the familiar blankness in my parents' eyes. "I always knew Rebecca would do something special," Grandmother said, her voice brimming with pride. And then my mother, with that familiar, dismissive tone. "Yes, well, she always was determined to prove herself." "Prove myself?" I echoed, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Is that what you think I've been doing all these years?" My father, sipping his wine, didn't even look up. "Isn't it?" he asked. "Most adopted children go through a phase of overachievement. It's quite common, actually." The casual confirmation of what they had denied, gaslit, and hidden for 15 years. It just stunned me into silence. "Dad!" Allison looked genuinely shocked. "What are you saying?" My mother waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, she knows. She's known since she was 12. Though I don't see why we need to discuss it at dinner." My voice shook, a tremor I couldn't control. "You've denied it my entire life. Every time I asked, you made me feel crazy for even suggesting it." My father, calm, detached, as if explaining something to a difficult client. "We thought it was better that way. Children need stability." "I needed truth," I countered, my voice rising. "The truth is," my mother said, with sudden, vicious sharpness, "we gave you everything. A beautiful home, the best education, every advantage. Most adopted children would be grateful." Grandmother Martha's hand slammed down on the table, a sharp crack against the porcelain. "That's enough, Margaret." But it wasn't enough. 20 years. 20 years of feeling like an outsider, of conditional love, of gaslit reality, came pouring out of me like a torrent. "You never wanted me," I yelled, the words tearing from my throat. "You wanted the idea of me. The perfect daughter you could show off at parties. The one who would validate your parenting without ever demanding actual parenting from you." I stood up, my napkin fluttering to the floor. "I'm done trying to earn love that should have been freely given." I walked out that night. And I didn't look back. I changed my phone number. Moved to a new apartment across town. Grandmother Martha was the only one I stayed in touch with, meeting for our weekly Sunday brunches, far away from my parents' suffocating house. "They do love you," she insisted once, her eyes pleading. "They just don't know how to show it." I looked at her, my heart heavy. "Love isn't supposed to be this hard," I replied. "She died 6 months ago." Grandmother Martha. Peacefully in her sleep. I was traveling for work, and I missed the funeral. My parents didn't even bother to call me about it. I found out through an attorney's letter, informing me that Grandmother Martha had left me her beautiful house, and the majority of her estate. I never got to hear the truth about my birth parents from her own lips. But fate, it turns out, had other, far more brutal plans for revealing family secrets. The day of the accident started like any other Tuesday. I was at our company headquarters in Cambridge, running tests on our newest software update. It was raining, that gentle, persistent New England drizzle that makes everything gray and slightly blurred at the edges. You should head home, Rebecca. My business partner, Samantha, suggested around 8. The update can wait until morning. But I've never been good at leaving things unfinished. By the time I finally left, it was after 10, and the rain had turned into a full-blown downpour. I remember thinking, I should call a car service. But my apartment was only 15 minutes away. What could possibly happen in 15 minutes? The intersection of Maple and 3rd has a blind spot, a nasty secret that locals know to watch for. The drunk driver who hit me? He wasn't local. I remember headlights. Suddenly, impossibly bright, filling my entire car. The grotesque sound of metal crushing metal. The strange, disorienting sensation of spinning. They told me later that my car flipped twice before hitting a lamppost. The impact deployed the airbags, which saved my life, but fractured 3 ribs and my collarbone. My head hit the side window hard enough to cause a traumatic brain injury. I have flashes of memory from the ambulance, red lights pulsing, a paramedic saying my name over and over, the oxygen mask over my face. Then darkness. When I next became aware, it was through voices. Distant. Clinical. I couldn't open my eyes. Couldn't move a single muscle. But I could hear. This state, conscious but utterly unable to respond, would later be explained as a result of the brain injury and the medically induced coma they placed me in to reduce swelling. Significant trauma to the temporal lobe. A woman's voice was saying. We've managed to control the intracranial pressure, but the next 24 hours will be critical. Have we located next of kin? Another voice, male this time. Emergency contact in her phone is listed as mother. We've called. They're on their way. Time has no meaning when you're floating in darkness. I don't know if it was minutes or hours later when I heard them arrive. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Dr. Chin, the neurologist managing your daughter's case. My father's voice, tense and controlled as always, cut through the quiet. What happened? Dr. Chin explained the accident, my injuries, the induced coma, the grim, uncertain prognosis. And what exactly are you doing for her? My mother, her voice dripping with irritation, as if my traumatic brain injury was nothing more than an inconvenient smudge on her schedule. Currently, we're monitoring intracranial pressure and maintaining the coma to give her brain time to heal. She'll need surgery once she's stabilized, to repair the orbital fracture. Surgery? My father again. What kind of costs are we looking at here? There was a heavy pause. I can only imagine Dr. Chin was giving them that look, the one medical professionals reserve for particularly callous family members. Your insurance information would be helpful, she finally said, her voice strained. And we'll need authorization for the surgical procedure. There's been a misunderstanding, my mother said, her voice dropping, almost a whisper. Rebecca isn't actually our daughter. I'm sorry? The doctor sounded genuinely confused. She has you listed as her emergency contacts. She was adopted. My father explained, smoothly, too smoothly. Informally. The papers were never properly filed. I see. The doctor's voice had cooled, significantly. Nevertheless, as her emergency contacts, you're not understanding me. My mother interrupted, her voice gaining strength. She's not our responsibility. We owe her nothing. I'd experienced their emotional abandonment my entire life. But this was different. This was leaving me to die. Without authorization for treatment. The doctor began, her voice tight. Then don't treat her, my father said simply. Isn't there a state fund for indigent patients or something? Mr. Mitchell. Dr. Chin's voice was sharp, a whip crack. Your daughter is critically injured. Without surgery, she's not our daughter, my mother insisted, almost yelling. Not legally. Not really. Silence. Then the rustling of papers. There's also the matter of Martha Mitchell's estate, a new voice said. A nurse, maybe. The patient was notified as the primary beneficiary. That's a family matter, my father said quickly. My mother was not in her right mind when she made that will. We've been meaning to contest it. I see, the doctor said, her voice now like ice. Well, in the absence of family willing to authorize treatment, we'll have to proceed under emergency provisions. Nurse Davis, please document this conversation and contact hospital legal. We'll be going now. My mother announced, her voice utterly devoid of warmth. Please don't contact us again regarding this patient. Footsteps. The door opening and closing. They were gone. Just like that. They were gone. I tried to scream. To move. To give any sign at all, that I could hear them, abandoning me. But I was trapped. Trapped in my broken body, a prisoner of my own consciousness. I've never seen anything like it, Nurse Davis apparently said quietly. Their own daughter. The doctor muttered. Rich people. Call legal. Then check her phone for other contacts. There must be someone who gives a damn about this woman. Time passed. I drifted in and out of awareness. Pain came and went, a dull throb, as medication flowed through my system. Different voices spoke around me, medical jargon I couldn't fully comprehend. But one voice became familiar. Gentle. Constant. I'm just changing your sheets for Rebecca. You're doing great. Nurse Emily Davis. She became my lifeline. She talked to me during her shifts, updating me on my condition, explaining the treatments, even telling me about the weather outside. She'd play music from her phone, everything from classical to Taylor Swift. The latest research shows coma patients can hear us. She told someone, her voice fierce. I'm not leaving her alone. Not after what her parents did. 3 days after the accident, through Emily's one-sided conversations, I learned that the hospital had located Samantha, my business partner and closest friend. She had rushed to the hospital, authorized the treatments, and was fighting my parents on multiple fronts. Your friend is something else, Emily told me during a sponge bath. She's got her lawyer here every day, making sure you get everything you need. Apparently your parents are already making moves on your grandmother's estate, claiming you're incapacitated. I wanted to scream with laughter at the sheer, brutal irony. They abandoned me to die, then tried to use my resulting condition to steal my inheritance? It was so perfectly on brand for them. The surgery happened on day 5. I remember being wheeled somewhere, bright lights overhead, then nothing until I woke up in recovery with a pounding headache and Emily's voice. You did it, Rebecca! Surgery went perfectly. Dr. Chin says your brain swelling is already reducing. They're going to start bringing you out of the coma tomorrow. True consciousness returned gradually. The ability to squeeze a hand when asked. Then opening my eyes to blinding light. Then the agonizing process of having the breathing tube removed. What? Where? My words croaked through lips that felt alien, like they belonged to someone else. Massachusetts General, Emily answered, appearing in my field of vision. You're okay. You're going to be okay. But I wasn't okay. Not really. Because now, I had to process what I'd heard. My parents had not only emotionally abandoned me my entire life. They had literally, deliberately, left me to die. Recovery was excruciating. Every movement sent shards of pain through my broken body. The first time they helped me sit up, I vomited from the vertigo. The steps I took with the physical therapist left me drenched in sweat and tears. But physical pain was nothing compared to the psychological wound of knowing my parents had walked away when I needed them most. That knowledge sat like poison in my veins, tainting every moment of recovery. You're doing amazing, Samantha would say during her daily visits. She'd brought my laptop, handled company decisions, fielded press inquiries about my accident. The doctors say you're recovering twice as fast as expected. Spite is a powerful motivator. I joked weakly, the words hollow. It was during that second week of my hospital stay that Samantha finally told me about Grandmother Martha's will. I didn't want to add to your stress, she explained, sitting in the visitor's chair beside my bed, looking worried. But you should know, your grandmother's attorney has been trying to reach you. Your parents are challenging the will. What? I struggled to sit up straighter. On what grounds? Samantha's expression was grim. They're claiming you're mentally incompetent due to your injuries. They filed the paperwork 3 days after your accident. The timing wasn't coincidental. They'd walked out of my hospital room, leaving me to die, and gone straight to a lawyer to steal my inheritance. My blood ran cold. I need to talk to her attorney, I insisted. Now. James Wright arrived the next morning. A dignified man in his 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd been my grandmother's attorney for 30 years. Miss Mitchell, he greeted me formally, his voice gentle. I'm relieved to see you recovering. Your grandmother would be pleased. My parents are trying to steal her house. I said without preamble, no time for pleasantries. He nodded, placing his briefcase on the bedside table. They filed for an emergency conservatorship, citing your medical condition. However, I've submitted medical reports from your doctors confirming you're competent to manage your affairs. The judge has temporarily frozen the estate until you can appear in court. There's no rush. The assets are secure. He pulled out a thick, heavy envelope from his briefcase. Your grandmother asked me to give you this, if anything happened to her before she could tell you herself. The envelope felt weighty in my hands. What is it? The truth, I believe. He stood to leave. She loved you very much, Rebecca. Never doubt that. I waited until evening to open it, after the nurses had finished their rounds and the hospital had quieted for the night. The letter began, If you're reading this, I failed to keep my promise to tell you everything in person. Forgive an old woman's cowardice. Some truths are harder to speak aloud than others. You've wondered about your birth parents all your life. The truth is, your mother was my niece, Caroline. She was 18 when she got pregnant, young, scared, and in no position to raise a child. Your biological father was her high school boyfriend, who left for college and wanted nothing to do with a baby. I suggested adoption, within the family. My son, Richard, and his wife, Margaret, had been trying for a child without success. It seemed the perfect solution. You would remain connected to your biological family, and they would have the baby they desperately wanted. What I didn't know then was that Margaret was already pregnant with Allison. She learned this just weeks after they took you home. Suddenly, they had 2 infant daughters instead of 1. I watched over the years as they treated you differently. I confronted Richard about it many times. He would always promise to do better, to love you equally. But some people cannot love what doesn't come from their own blood, no matter how precious the gift. The legal adoption was completed, regardless of what they may have told you. You are legally their daughter, with all the rights that entails. I've included the court documents proving this. I've also included the truth about your birth mother. Caroline died 5 years ago in a car accident, having never married or had other children. She asked about you often. I kept her updated on your accomplishments, your growth into the remarkable woman you've become. The house and everything I leave to you is rightfully yours, not just by my choice, but by blood. You are my family in every way that matters. I hope you can forgive me for not telling you sooner. I thought I was protecting you, but perhaps I was really protecting myself from having to explain my role in placing you with parents who couldn't love you as you deserved. Know that I have loved you completely from the moment Caroline placed you in my arms. All my love, always, Grandmother Martha. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Then I examined the documents. My original birth certificate, naming Caroline Mitchell as my mother. The adoption papers, with my parents' actual signatures. The amended birth certificate, listing Margaret and Richard Mitchell as my parents. It was all there. The truth. The proof. The confirmation that legally, morally, and by blood, I was a Mitchell. And my parents had lied. To the doctors. Probably to Allison. And certainly to themselves. That night, lying there in my hospital bed, I made 2 decisions. 1, I would recover fully, no matter how hard I had to work. 2, I would make sure my parents faced the consequences of their actions. All of them. I threw myself into physical therapy with renewed, almost savage determination. 2 broken ribs, a shattered collarbone, facial fractures, and a traumatic brain injury? None of it would stop me. I graduated from Walker to Kane within weeks, surprising even my therapists. You're a machine, Rebecca. My physical therapist, Jake, commented during one particularly grueling session. I have somewhere important to be, I replied, pushing through the pain, completing another set of exercises. Weeks after the accident, Dr. Chin cleared me for discharge. Emily helped me pack up the cards, flowers, and gifts that had accumulated in my room, most from colleagues and friends. None from my family. What now? Emily asked, as she wheeled me toward the hospital exit, where Samantha waited with her car. I looked up at the nurse who had advocated for me when my own family wouldn't. Now I go home and write a letter. As Samantha drove me to her apartment, where I'd be staying during outpatient recovery, I stared out the window at the familiar Boston streets. Somewhere across town, my parents were probably still plotting, still lying, still expecting to get away with it all. They had no idea what was coming. Samantha's guest room became my war room. On the wall, I created a timeline of events, connecting my accident to my parents' legal maneuvers. My laptop became command central as I gathered evidence and formulated strategy. "You should be resting, Rebecca," Samantha worried, bringing me tea one evening. "I'll rest when it's done," I replied, not looking up from the email I was writing to James Wright. My first step was securing my legal position. James confirmed what Grandmother Martha's letter had stated: my adoption was completely legal. My parents claimed that it was informal, was an outright lie. "They have no case for contesting the will," James assured me during one of our daily calls. "But they're trying another angle now. Claiming that as your parents, they should be your legal guardians during your recovery. After abandoning me at the hospital?" I was incredulous. "They're saying it was a misunderstanding, that they were in shock. They've submitted affidavits claiming deep concern for your welfare." Oh, I bet they have, I thought. I remembered the hospital security footage Emily had mentioned. "Can we subpoena the hospital records?" There were security cameras in my room. "Already done," James said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "The footage contradicts their affidavit rather dramatically." Next came property security. Grandmother's house stood empty while the estate was in probate, but I knew my parents still had keys. I hired a security company to change the locks and install cameras throughout the property. "We can set up remote monitoring," the security consultant explained. "You'll be able to see any activity in real time on your phone or computer." "Perfect," I said. "And I want the footage backed up to a secure cloud server." Then came the most difficult part, writing the letter. I must have drafted it 20 different times, ranging from rage-filled accusations to cold, clinical facts. None of it felt right. "You're overthinking it," Samantha said one night, as I crumpled yet another attempt. "Just speak from your heart." "My heart wants to burn their world down," I admitted. "Then say that," she replied. I shook my head. "No. This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. It's about finally being seen." The breakthrough came during a session with Dr. Morris, the therapist I'd been seeing since leaving the hospital. "What do you really want from them?" she asked after I'd explained the situation. "I want them to acknowledge what they did. Not just at the hospital, but my whole life." "And if they never do?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Then I want to be free of needing them to." That night I wrote the letter that would be waiting for them. Not from a place of anger, but from a place of searing clarity. I detailed their decades of emotional neglect, the lies about my adoption, and their ultimate betrayal at the hospital. I included copies of the security footage showing them abandoning me, and copies of the legal documents proving my adoption was legitimate. But I also included forgiveness. Not for their sake, but for mine. I was releasing them from any obligation to me. And releasing myself from any obligation to them. "I no longer need your approval, your acknowledgement, or your love," I wrote in the final paragraph. "I am whole without you." I sealed the letter in an envelope and gave it to James to place in the house when the time was right. The final piece fell into place when James called to inform me my parents had scheduled a visit to Grandmother's house, ostensibly to collect personal mementos, before the estate was settled. "They filed the paperwork with the probate court," he explained. "They're coming this Saturday at 2 p.m. Will Allison be with them?" I hadn't spoken to my sister since that Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I had no idea if she knew what our parents had done. "Yes, she's listed on the court filing." I took a deep breath. Then, "It's time." That Saturday morning, James placed my letter on the dining room table in Grandmother's house. The security company confirmed the cameras were operational. Samantha and I settled in at her apartment to watch the feed on my laptop. At exactly 2:03 p.m., my parents' gleaming Mercedes pulled into the driveway. The plan was in motion. And there was no turning back. Through the security cameras, I watched them approach Grandmother's front door. My father looked annoyed, checking his watch repeatedly. My mother wore her practice charity event smile, the one that never reached her eyes. Allison hung back slightly, her expression unreadable. "The key isn't working," my father complained, jiggling the doorknob. "Did you try the back door?" my mother suggested. "I shouldn't have to try the back door. This is my mother's house," Allison corrected him quietly. "Was her house." My father shot her a look before pulling out his phone. After a brief conversation, a locksmith arrived. I watched, a ghost in my own story, as he opened the door, had my father sign some paperwork, and departed. "Finally," my mother said, sweeping inside. Richard, check if the silver is still here. I want to make sure Rebecca hasn't already emptied the place. The casual accusation made my blood boil. Samantha placed a hand on my shoulder. Remember why we're doing this? She murmured. I nodded, forcing myself to focus on the screens as my family moved through my grandmother's house. Everything looks the same, Allison commented, running her fingers along the antique sideboard in the hallway. Mother always did have good taste. My mother admitted, examining a crystal vase. This would look perfect in our foyer. We're here for your father's childhood mementos, Allison, not to shop. Allison reminded her, a hint of steel in her voice. Don't be naive. My mother snapped. Rebecca is never going to recover enough to claim this inheritance. The judge will award guardianship to us, and then everything here will be ours anyway. She's in physical therapy now, Allison said, almost a challenge. Her doctors say she's making remarkable progress. Well, her brain injury is another matter. My father interjected, coming down the stairs. The silver is all there, Margaret. I checked the master bedroom too. Nothing seems disturbed. Has anyone actually visited her recently? Allison asked, a quiet plea. To see how she's doing? My parents exchanged a glance. The hospital staff have been very uncooperative. My mother said primly. Besides, you know how Rebecca is. She's always been so independent. Too independent. My father muttered. If she'd listened to me about that driving route, are you seriously blaming her for getting hit by a drunk driver? Allison sounded incredulous. Of course not. My mother soothed. Your father is just upset. This has been hard on all of us. They moved into the dining room, where my letter waited on the polished mahogany table. What's this? My father picked up the envelope. My name was written on the front, in my grandmother's distinctive handwriting. James had used an old birthday card as reference. It's addressed to Rebecca. Allison pointed out. Well, she's not here, is she? My mother plucked it from my father's hands and tore it open. As she began reading, her face drained of color, going utterly white. What? What is it? My father demanded. Wordlessly, she handed him the letter. He skimmed it, his expression darkening with each page. This is outrageous. He spluttered finally. Lies and manipulations. What does it say? Allison reached for the letter, but my father held it away. Nothing you need to concern yourself with. Family business. I am family, Allison insisted, snatching the letter from his hand. She began reading, her eyes widening, page by page. Mom. Dad. What is this? About abandoning Rebecca at the hospital? My mother collapsed dramatically into a dining chair. It wasn't like that. We were in shock. The doctors were so pessimistic. It says here you told them she wasn't your real daughter and you owed her nothing. Allison's voice shook. That you left without authorizing treatment. That's taken out of context. My father blustered. We merely explained that the adoption was complicated. Allison continued reading, her face growing paler. There's a link to security footage. She pulled out her phone, her hands trembling, and typed in the URL from the letter. For several agonizing minutes, the dining room was silent, save for the tiny audio coming from Allison's phone, my parents' voices, perfectly calm, clearly stating I wasn't their daughter, that they owed me nothing, that they wouldn't authorize treatment. You left her to die. Allison whispered. When the video ended, her voice shattered. Your own daughter. She's not. My mother began, then stopped herself. Not what? Not your daughter? Because according to these documents, she absolutely is. Allison brandished the adoption papers included with the letter, the papers shaking in her hand. You legally adopted her. You raised her for 20 years. And then you abandoned her when she needed you most? You don't understand the complexities. My father started. I understand perfectly. Allison cut him off, her voice thick with emotion. I've always known you treated her differently. I thought it was because she was so self-sufficient, so competent. I never imagined it was because you didn't consider her your real daughter. My mother straightened, reverting to the haughty demeanor she used when challenged. We gave her everything. An excellent education. Every opportunity. Except love. Allison finished, her voice breaking. Except the one thing she actually needed. On the security feed, I watched my sister's realization unfold, in real time. The pieces falling into place, The recognition of patterns she'd observed her entire life but never truly understood. All those times you dismissed her achievements, she said slowly, her eyes wide with dawning horror. All those times you made her feel less than, it wasn't because you had high standards. It was because you didn't think she belonged. That's not true, my father insisted. We always wanted the best for her. The best? Allison's voice rose, sharp and furious. You left her with brain trauma and broken bones to die alone in a hospital. How was that the best? My mother stood suddenly. We need to find Rebecca. She's clearly been poisoned against us. That Samantha person has always been a bad influence. She knows about the conservatorship filing, doesn't she? My father realized, scanning the letter again. She knows we're trying to take control of Mother's estate. Is that all you care about? Allison asked, incredulously. The money? The house? What about your daughter who nearly died? Of course we care about Rebecca. My mother said automatically, robotically. But we have to be practical. In her condition that you made worse by abandoning her. Allison interrupted, her voice raw. Her condition that you're now trying to exploit to steal her inheritance. My father's face hardened. That's enough, Allison. This doesn't concern you. Doesn't concern me? Rebecca is my sister. Half-sister? My mother corrected reflexively, then pressed her hand to her mouth, as if trying to push the words back in. Allison stared at her. So it's true. You really don't think of her as family. The realization seemed to physically pain her. She gathered the letter and documents with trembling hands. I can't be here right now. I can't be near either of you. Allison, wait. My father called as she headed for the door. I'll be at my apartment. Don't call me. I need time to process this. She gestured vaguely at them. All of this. After she left, my parents stood in stunned silence. Now look what you've done. My mother finally hissed, turning on my father. You've turned Allison against us too. Me? You're the one who called Rebecca her half-sister. Well, she is. And now both our daughters hate us. And Rebecca is going to use this letter and that video to destroy us in court. My father paced the dining room, running his hands through his thinning hair. We need to call Gerald, their lawyer. He'll know how to spin this. We can say we were distraught, not thinking clearly. The video, Richard. The video shows us perfectly calm, perfectly clear. We'll say it was edited. Deepfakes are everywhere these days. My mother sank back into the chair. This is a nightmare. They continued plotting for another hour, calling their lawyer, searching the house for valuables they could claim as family heirlooms, making lists of potential character witnesses who could testify to their parental devotion. It was painful to watch, but also illuminating. They never once expressed concern for my well-being. Never once questioned whether their treatment of me had been wrong. They were solely focused on damage control, on preserving their reputation, and access to my grandmother's money. When they finally left, taking several small antiques despite Allison's earlier objection, I closed the laptop. Well, Samantha said quietly, her voice tinged with a weary understanding. That was exactly what I expected. They haven't changed. I finished for her. They never will. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's Allison. We need to talk. Please. I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. The cafe on Cambridge Street. Whatever came next, I was finally ready to face it. On my terms. The cafe on Cambridge Street was buzzing when I arrived, leaning heavily on my cane. Allison was already there, sitting at a corner table, 2 untouched coffees in front of her. She looked up as I approached, her eyes widening, fixating on my still-healing facial injuries. Rebecca! She stood awkwardly, hesitating between a hug and a handshake. We settled for an uncomfortable nod. Allison. I eased myself into the chair opposite her. You wanted to talk. She pushed one of the coffees toward me. Black, with 1 sugar. You still take it that way? I nodded, surprised she remembered. Thanks. I didn't know, she blurted out, her voice raw, close to tears. About the hospital. About them leaving you there. I swear I didn't know. I believe you. And I did. Allison had many faults, but deliberate cruelty wasn't one of them. Did you read the entire letter? She nodded miserably. And watch the video. I can't believe they would do that to anyone, let alone their own daughter. Not their daughter, I corrected automatically. Not in their eyes. But you are legally. And, well, we grew up together. You're my sister. She reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled back slightly. 28 years, Allison. 28 years of watching them love you completely, while measuring out affection to me like it was a limited resource. Did you really never notice? She flushed. I noticed they were harder on you. I thought it was because you were the oldest, or because you were so smart, they had higher expectations. They told the hospital staff I wasn't their real daughter. That they owed me nothing. My voice remained steady, but inside I felt the familiar, old ache. Those weren't heat-of-the-moment words. That was their truth. It's not my truth, Allison insisted, her voice firm. You're my sister. My big sister who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my college applications and stood up for me when I totaled Dad's car. I had done all those things, because that's what big sisters do. Even when they're jealous of the golden child. Even when they're starving for the love that's showered on their sibling. What do you want from me, Allison? She looked taken aback by the directness of the question. I want us to be sisters again. Real sisters. I've missed you these 3 years. And our parents? Where do they fit in this vision? Her expression darkened. I don't know. I'm not speaking to them right now. What they did, I can't forgive it. They'll pressure you to reconcile, I warned. They'll minimize what happened, rewrite history. I know their playbook. She managed a weak smile. I've had a front-row seat to their revisionist history, believe me. We sat in silence for a moment, the cafe noise washing over us. Can I ask you something? Allison finally said. The letter you left them, what did it actually say? The whole thing? I took a sip of coffee, considering. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the document where I'd saved the final version. Dear Richard and Margaret, I began reading. I'm addressing you by your names because Mom and Dad no longer feels truthful. Parents protect their children. Parents put their children's needs above their own. You have done neither. By the time you read this, you will have already tried to declare me incompetent. You will have already filed paperwork to control the inheritance grandmother Martha left me. You will have already begun crafting a narrative that paints you as concerned parents and me as an ungrateful daughter. Let me save you the effort. I am alive. Despite your best efforts. The doctors at Massachusetts General Hospital have documented your refusal to authorize my treatment. The security cameras captured your exact words. She's not our real daughter. We owe her nothing. For 28 years, I have tried to earn your love. I achieved academic excellence. I built a successful company. I did everything possible to make you proud. It was never enough. Because I was never enough. Not your blood. Not your real daughter. Grandmother Martha left me a letter explaining everything. My birth mother